One of the projects we are working on is in the Bronx in New York. The Bronx is an amazing place of contradictions. It has it's the poorest urban county in the United States, and it has the third largest retail district in New York City. It has most of its neighborhoods are food deserts, and it has the world's largest food distribution center right in the Bronx. The health status of many Bronx residents is really depressed, and it is a center for major New York hospitals. So there's this disconnect between the resources that exist in the Bronx and the access to those resources for people who live in the Bronx. And so we're working on that problem. We're working on that problem in a number of ways. First, we're creating opportunities for community residents to participate in planning economic development. Most of the time, the projects that have been developed in the Bronx, the economic development projects, have not asked the community, what their aspirations are, what they think, how they would like to see the Bronx developed. And there are very strong, well-organized community groups there that have a lot of intelligence about the needs of the Bronx. So one of CoLab's values is that the knowledge that people who live in a community bring to development process is an incredibly valuable resource for making development succeed. And so we want those voices and that knowledge to be at the table. And sometimes what it takes is some technical assistance, some help in framing or visualizing the question or the problem or the solution. And that's kind of what CoLab does. It brings students, and we have a staff, and together we help the community take guidance and leadership from the community to frame the answers and the solutions that the community wants, and figure out ways to bring that to the table, to the planning table, to the economic development table. We think a lot about social cohesion in communities. There's a lot of ways in which the absence of money, you don't have money, but you have each other. And there are a lot of ways that people help each other without, because it's all they have. And so we've been trying to figure out how we tap into that in the Bronx in particular. And so even before we started working in the Bronx, there was a tremendous effort to organize the community to figure out how it wanted development to unfold. There was a big fight. There's an armory in the Bronx. It's the biggest in the world. And the mayor wanted to turn it into a shopping mall, some kind of development that was low-wage jobs. And people in the Bronx have had low-wage, poor-condition jobs since forever, generations. And people sort of said, it's enough. We have to figure out another way of bringing economic development into this community that actually helps us do better than we've been doing. And they organized a process over a year of meetings in communities, talking to people about the plans, asking people what they wanted to see for the armory. And it really changed the nature of discussion about development in the Bronx. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to say, well, they need jobs, just give them minimum wage jobs, it doesn't matter. Because people were saying, we want more for ourselves and for our kids. And through that process, actually, the community groups came to agree that they wanted worker-owned businesses, and that they wanted to work with the local institutions, the hospitals, the museums, the botanical gardens, the Bronx Zoo, to figure out how those institutions, which have huge expenditures just to keep themselves going, how some of those operations could be used to support the community. How, hospitals buy everything from diapers to salad to car service and everything in between. And most of those purchases aren't made in the Bronx. They're not looking to Bronx businesses. They look outside of the borough to get those to get their needs met. And so the community began to say, you know, are there examples anywhere in the world where, you know, it's done differently, where anchor institutions, institutions that exist in the community, are looking to the community itself to provide their needs and then helping to enrich the community. So that was the beginning of the Bronx Project. On the other side, community organizations, so this idea of buy local, hire local, and the community organizations wanted to take it one step further and say, what's our role? How do we, if we're asking them to buy local, what kind of businesses do we need to create? What kind of businesses do we need to attract? How do we make sure that when the hospital or the Bronx Zoo comes looking for a local vendor, that there's somebody on the other end to provide what they need? So this is a real challenge. How do you make available the entrepreneurial skill and experience to allow businesses that are being created to address the needs of the community and the institutions in the community? How can we make sure that they can survive and flourish? And so one of the things we've done in the Bronx is we've developed a relationship with Mondragon, which is an industrial co-op in Spain owned by workers, 100,000 workers. And they have a bank, and it's a very developed industrial complex. We're working with them to get help thinking through how you set up successful co-ops, and not just individual co-ops, you know, a taxi cab co-op or a food co-op, but figure out how the co-ops can be networked with each other and support each other. That's a big added advantage that helps to make businesses that are worker-owned more sustainable and resilient. If they are connected to each other, they can supply each other and, you know, work with each other to support each other's needs.